Okay, so it says that we're live. I believe that we're live. Let me just double check the
I think we're
YouTube
alive.
stream here. Yeah, it looks like we're live.
Mhm.
And I see Eric is in the chat here. Uh, Eric is a super synth nerd and just awesome person. So that's great to see him in here. Uh, so before we get started, I just want to check levels and make sure everything is good. I am here with Erica Synths. I am going to be the host, unfortunately. So I am Ken Flux Pierce of fluxwithit.com. And yeah, so the Synth Summit show, just to give everybody a little bit of an understanding of what this show is, it's been a while since the last episode, but I like to interview interesting people in the music tech world, and the idea here is really to kind of get an understanding of the people and things that take place behind the gear that we all love and use. So it's not always so specific about like one individual piece of gear, but it might be more about the story that created that gear and how we got there. I hope that everyone is safe. Right now, there is some horrible fires going on the West Coast. I am on the East Coast, but so I'm wishing everyone there uh, safety, and hopefully, if I know some of my friends out there have lost homes and are really dealing with some tragedy over there. Hopefully, this can bring a little bit of joy to them for some amount of time. So to introduce my guests, I have Gertz from Erica Synths, and I'm gonna see if I can. Oh, what happened there? Okay, there he is.
I vanished. I vanished.
There, that was Gears. There he is again.
So yeah. That was him doing a disappearing act and then coming back. And Martin of 112 DB. So first, before we get into specifics about other things, can you tell? I'm going to start with Martin. Can you tell me a little bit about 112 DB and when that company started? I've had actually Gertz on here once before, but I have not had you. So can we start with the 112 DB story?
Yes, well, the 112 the B story starts before me actually. It was Jules, friend of mine. He started the company and he had like a sampler and like a few effects. And I was then a little bit later introduced to him, and I also had like some. I cobbled together some code with a friend of mine, like a reverb and a compressor and like delay and I was kind of like on yeah. I didn't really have to had the time to work on the code too much because I was kind of like first I worked at Native Instruments and then I went to California where I was teacher at California Institute of the Arts. And my friend also had like way too much to do. But Jules from 112 dB, he thought like, hey, he had like this framework where like audio units and like the artas of etc etc. So that's how we connected. Like 112 dB started distributing like redline reverb, and so that's how that kind of got started. But yeah, Jules he unfortunately passed away. He all of a sudden he got like incredibly ill, and it was just absolutely horrible. And then yeah, when he passed away, like his wife Anushka, she asked me because I just got back from California and moved back to the Netherlands, and she asked if I could help out, and so I became now together with her the two official people of the 112 dB company, and yeah, we had yeah, a lot of people collaborating, like also freelance people and stuff like that. But in the end, we thought it was better if we did it all ourselves. So we spent quite a bit of time to learn how to get all the C code and plugins and installers and like etc etc. So it's just Anushka and me now that are running this thing. Yeah.
So You mentioned your time with Native Instruments. Was that the first audio company that you were working with? Like when did that start? That journey of like really starting to work on audio products first start for you?
Oh, well, actually, like this audio thing is kind of like I don't know. I think it's something I got born with or something. Like according to my mom, like before I could walk, I could turn screws out of the radio with my thumbnail, right? And because I wanted to know what inside, and I was always in totally into music. And at some point, I saw this electric organ. I think when I was 3, and I was like, "Wow, what is that?" And like, so I was completely technology and sound. That's always been my thing, and. Yeah, so I remember like when I was like a little recording that like my parents recorded when I was playing the piano, and then I played a few notes. Yeah, yeah, and I said like, yeah, but can we not turn this thing into an electric organ? And then no, you can't do that. It's a piano. And I said like, yeah, okay, so you can continue playing. So I played a few more notes, and then they were like, then I said like, you know, but maybe if we can drill some holes in this piano, and then we put some switches in there, you know, like maybe you can turn it into an electric organ anyway, right? And so I think it started really when I was young, and then at some point I studied music technology, I think in the 80s for a bit, and I was completely into synthesis and all that stuff, and I started to program a little bit, and first I did all sorts of things actually, and then I think I had this like, for example, how this Steampipe came about. It was like, I think somewhere in '87 I got a hold on these proceedings of like International Music Conference of '87 in Köln, and then there was this guy who had like bucket brigade delays with Z80 processor, and he managed to create, I already knew a little bit about the Carper Strong idea, but to combine these things, he could do bells and like, and then but it was a very short article. I didn't really understood it fully, but it was very inspiring. So I always was playing them with delays and putting things in the feedback and stuff like that. And I think somewhere near the end of the 90s, I was programming a little bit in C. I was not very skilled at it then, but I tried to come up with like, my own synthesis thing. And then my teacher, Ernst Bonus, he told me like, you should get the sync modeler of Dr. Sync. And I was like, okay. So he said, because, you know, like I heard about this Native Instruments product called Generator, which is like a kind of reactor. I thought it was kind of cool, but he said, no, you have to have sync modeler, because you can open the oscillator and you can see how the oscillator works, and you can open the filter and you can see how the filter works. So I was kind of like, okay, so I got that. And then all of a sudden, I combined all these ideas of like, like somehow getting, these delays with the feedback, and what can you put in there, and lots of experimentation I did before, and somehow, that's how I made this Steampipe. And the reason why it's called Steampipe actually is because I was trying. The Carpet Strong is basically you ping it, and then you get like a guitar plucked type of thing. But I wanted to have it oscillate, like with the flute. You blow on it, and it will. It's not an impulse that just resonates, but it's somehow like it starts oscillating. And I couldn't get it to work. And then I thought, like, at some point, I thought, but a steam engine can do that. It can turn like an airflow into a rotation. So then I thought about the steam engine, and then I thought, well, then it's a steam pipe. So I thought it was a very funny name. So I made this steam pipe in the Sync modular, and I put it in the Sync modular user forum, and that was a huge hit, and I got lots of feedback from all sorts of people, and also somehow Native Instruments got interested, so they connected me, and they said that well, you know, like if we give you a box with Reactor, because then Reactor just already was a little bit today. We give you a box of reactor, and then you give us the Steampipe. So I wrote them back and I told them that I had a better deal, that they should give me the box with the reactor and I would give them absolutely nothing. And
That makes
it took
sense.
3 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Like, and then it took
agree.
3 weeks or something. And then they said, okay, whatever. And so they sent me the box of reactor. And then I thought, like, well, that's a nice thing of them to do. So then I also made a version in the reactor, and I put it in the reactor user library. So then it was another version of Steampipe, but not for, all sync modeler and then also in reactor. And meanwhile, the guy that did the sync modeler, Vadim Zavalishin, he was also recruited by Native Instruments, and so he was working on the next version of the reactor, which eventually became what they call reactor core technology. And then they also asked me to somehow join the company. So then I worked for quite some years at Native Instruments. And it kind of started with that I had a Steampipe at some point. Yeah. And
I was
also all sorts of versions of this Steampipe. Like I have even an 8-bit version on an AVR microcontroller. And,
when I went to I think it was Super Booth when I first heard about it. And I heard the name, like it kept jogging my mind, and I hadn't realized that, like, oh yeah, like I've been using Reactor for, better part of 15 years or so now, and I'm like, oh, that's what I use. So how did the combination between 112 dB and Erica Synths first happen? Because this isn't the first time you guys have collaborated.
No, that's interesting. Well, when I was teaching at CalArts, right? I was doing this synthesis course basically, and I was using Reactor in class, so that I taught them how to build synthesizers and then how to do sound design and stuff like that. And there was a guy in the neighborhood, and that's Pedro Estagi. He's kind of like an incredible, fantastic, talented flute player, and yeah. So I didn't know that,
let me, Martin, let me stress this. He's an absolutely talented person, and he plays wind instruments for including for Hans Zimmer, for all like blockbusters you
yeah,
exactly. And I Pedro, if you are listening us, I invited Pedro to watch the stream, so he's good friend of ours.
Pedro, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was at some point he just walked into my class, and he really wanted to discuss, because he also knew about the Steampipe, and he was really interested in how this worked, and so he became a very good friend of me, and also I was kind of like his teacher a little bit in what all my expertise and what I was teaching anyway there, and I was also teaching Pedro about doing stuff with Reactor and how the tricks of what the Steampipe made, etc. And Pedro is really well connected with lots of people. And he's always at NAMM show, and he's following the electronics very closely. And he knew Geertz, and he thought, like this Martin guy and this Geertz guy, that's a combination. So he hooked us up.
And then I went to Utrecht for a Dutch Modular Fest, and then we met in person, I guess, for first time, Martin. Right?
Yeah, I think I done. Yeah, something like that. And before that, we had. I think we had like some email exchange. Yeah. And that's that was a good click.
Yeah, and then we started slowly because we needed some effects for some of our synthesizers, like Syntrex, also for Percuans. We needed good BBD emulation, not good, like excellent BBD emulation, and Martin cracked it like really well, and we developed our DSP platform, and Martijn closely collaborates with Yanis, our engineer and designer. So from my perspective, they both are geniuses. So what Martijn codes, Yanis turns into hardware like in an hour or something. You know.
Man, listen, that's that's a feat that most companies would kill for. So, so the you guys also did, what was it? The delay, um, and the reverb. So what are all the combined products between the two companies?
So as I
Well,
mentioned
we
before, it's Syntrex. Those we had few products which kicked off our collaboration where Martijn and 112 dB they were involved invisibly. There were
Ah,
no
okay,
like
okay.
so which was Syntrex and Perquon's FXs. But then yeah our and then few modules we have black reverb and black stereo delay, so
Yeah, that's
those
where
are
my mind was going to, because, like I use a lot of the Eurorack stuff, so my mind instantly went to the stereo delay, which is fantastic. I use that honestly every day in my rack. So that's like
oh,
the tap function on that and how that works is so much fun. But so what would you say is the biggest challenge in working this way? Do you find that you know, because technically he's an external person working with Erica Synths. But does it feel kind of internal because you guys are pretty close, or like is that like a pretty seamless process?
I do
I think
not see
so.
Martijn as an external person at all. We are a couple of thousand kilometers apart, but but the approach to how we approach processes and how we approach treating new ideas, it's we synchronize like instantly, and I haven't had so good feedback from any collaboration partner as from Martijn. Yes, sometimes we have crazy idea, and Martijn just says, "Well, let me how do you put it? Let me um, give a shot with some coding, and then in a couple of hours or next day there is already something." Martijn, now it's your turn to reflect on our collaboration.
Yeah, well, hey, I can only yeah confirm. I have the same with Gears. Like I think our collaboration is very natural and very at ease. Like we can spin ideas very fast and yeah, ping pong and make something works. And meanwhile, we having a great time. And yeah, we were just great friends as far as that. Yeah, so it's
only
perfect.
only area where we fail miserably is to find place for dinner in Netherlands.
Hey, that's not my fault. That's the Netherlands, right? Like
It was at least 2-3 times when we wanted to have a dinner, and or everything was closed, or it somehow didn't work out at all.
hey, but Nush cooked a really cool dinner though, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I
So
hope to get
great
out to
job.
the Netherlands sometime soon as well. That's where my mother was born, actually. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, small world. So with
Yeah,
Steampipe, I want to
yeah.
I want to get into a little bit about the fact that so it started in you know public consumption as this reactor ensemble, right? And then you
No.
have well,
Same butler.
in popular. So, but the question that I have here is really about, there's been multiple iterations of Steampipe and
Yeah.
how Steampipe as you know, kind of as a platform and as what it is today has evolved over time.
Yes.
So
Well,
I'm asking.
I really have to know it.
Start with software iterations, and then I will continue on hardware iterations.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just I'd like to
Well,
know
for,
about how that changed over time and what sort of tweaks and changes you discovered and wanted to apply as you evolved that.
Mhm. Well, I just first I want to stress that because there's a lot of ideas about that Steampipe is a reactor ensemble, and I can understand why people believe that, but reactor ensembles don't grow on trees. That's one thing, right? Like, so somebody cooks them up, and also it's important that the reactor was not the first one. It started way before with the sync modeler version, and then of course the iterations, like how there have been also other iterations which are not in the public available, where I try different things, and sometimes they come back and stuff like that. But what the challenges are with the Steampipe, um, okay, what is one, for example, one really tricky thing with the Steampipe is the tuning. So
I knew you were going
if
to
you
go there
have,
first.
yeah, because and that is really a tricky thing. So basically, what the thing is, when you have okay, in the feedback of Steampipe, there's a low pass and a high pass filter, and they you can shove them and modulate them around, and then in that band it will resonate. This is how you can do overblow. So you go, you know, so it will go to the next harmonic by shuffling these two filters. But a low pass and a high pass filter, they have phase response also. So not only frequency response. And this phase response that results in a delay, which is frequency dependent. So like different frequencies have different extra delay. And to make it go in tune, you have to compensate for that. But if you compensate for one particular frequency and then you overblow, that's a different frequency. That's an octave higher or an octave in the fifth, or like one of the harmonics, right? And so if you compensate for the fundamental, those kind of don't work anymore. So really the challenge was to get a good compromise there, because like it's this phase response and all that shit. A normal flute has the same thing. If you blow a little harder or something, it starts to go up in pitch a little bit, and then it flops. And then the flute, the way it is built, and like there is compensation for this as well, so that the octave is still some sort of an octave if you overblow. Yeah. So okay. So this is the really tricky part, and that evolved quite a bit over the time. And then the other thing which was, for example, in this in the more later version, the version that we have now also in hardware, but from the software point of view, and then Gibbs is going to talk about the hardware, that was different ways of expression. Because originally, when I was working on Steampipe, I only used like a keyboard and a modulation wheel. And yeah, Pedro, he's kind of stressed, like, hey, you know, like, but you know, like I have wind controllers, so like he has like a Silvio wind controller, and you know, like there is also the EV from Akai that I got, and I was like, oh yeah, well, with the wind controller, things are different. So not only to have the envelope decide the amount of steam, but also to have like the pressure that you blow in this wind controller to say that's the power of the steam, and those kind of things. They really yeah, they really quite changed over time. And also
So
like the filters and like, you know, like all the little DSP, like I got a lot. Well, fortunately, I got smarter every time. Yeah, over time. Yeah.
So
So everything is
in the
different.
moving between different platforms, right? So like you say, you know, from sync modeler to reactor to hardware, the method in which you're coding this DSP and you're creating the actual models, and you're also like you say, you're evolving the filters, and you're you know, finding new ways to compensate for the tuning and that sort of thing. Um,
Hmm.
was this a large challenge for you to move between those platforms, or was this kind of like okay, I'm just working, from crayons to colored pencils, and like I'm still drawing what I want to draw, but just trying to find your technique in those new platforms, or what?
Well, yeah, I have to. Um, I have to say something very nice about Reactor, if you don't mind, and why I got into Sync Modeler and this Reactor, and why I think it's the most important software tool for doing this kind of stuff is like if you look at different platforms like Max MSP or like those McMathew things like Super Collider and those yeah, pure data, they that kind of goes like you have filters and you have oscillators and you have so you have all these things, right? And then if you, for example, would switch to like C programming, then all of a sudden you have to say like, oh yeah, but how does a filter work? And then you have to either use filters that you find somewhere, or you have to create them from scratch. But the thing with the Reactor Core is that the subset is basically like how does a filter work? Well, you have multiply, you have add, so you can mix stuff, you can subtract things, you can multiply, you gain stage, and then there is feedback. So you write something and you read it back. Like there's always one simple delay in feedback digitally. And that's exactly how filters and oscillators and envelopes and the whole shit works in the reactor. And you can just type it out and see, and it sounds it's exactly the same thing. So there's no change. So it doesn't really matter. Like
Nice.
if you can do it in the Reactor Core, if you can build like a synthesizer from beginning to end in Reactor Core, then yeah, well, it's a little bit of work. You have to type it in, but it will sound exactly the same. And
Very
the
nice.
reactor is just like an extreme, how you say that, scratch board, like laboratory to develop, to learn about digital signal processing, because you really can get that low. You cannot do that in any other, not really, like you cannot really do that in any of the other, because there you have already, yeah, pre-built oscillators, filters, envelopes, and like you just
Yeah,
have
I
to
think the
deal with them.
lowest level that I get on Reactor is like I'll get down to like the oscillator blocks and that sort of thing, but I'm not doing the actual coding of core. But it's brilliant how deep it goes, and I really hope that they continue Reactor. Like I don't know what's going on that side anymore. I used to do a lot of internal testing with Native Instruments, and I've since
Yeah.
kind of stepped back from them. But it
Okay,
seems
but that's politics, man.
exactly, and
It
that's
doesn't
kind of
really matter. Like the cool thing is that regardless the politics, like like that company, whatever. But this reactor tool, I cannot stress how important this is to learn. Uh, it's like, hey, if you don't want to build your oscillators, well, that's okay. Like if people plays the piano and they play it really nice, I'm not saying it. You're faking it because you didn't build the piano, right?
yep.
It's okay, like please, but that you can, first of all, that you can build these things in the reactor. That's something that you can find stuff that other people build and just open them up and just see what makes it tick. That's a good thing. And you can experiment and test it out and try and listen and really quickly swap out a filter, or say like, oh, like, but how about I put this in the feedback and see what happens, like, and you immediately have, yeah, it's extremely good. You can,
Yeah, I've
but
learned a
okay,
lot
enough
about signal
commercial.
flow from that as well. I mean, like you can really kind of go from top down. So if you're fairly basic, I mean, you can start with just using an ensemble, and then you can learn how to chain an ensemble to an effect module or something, and then you can kind of progress a little bit deeper. And like I've built my own reverbs and stuff in there where I was like, I really want to modulate my pre-delay and do this and that with the feedback loop on it, and you can actually do that in Reactor without having to know a whole lot about DSP coding and whatnot. But it opens the door to get you a bit further, which is really useful.
Yeah, and it allows you to get as deep as you want. You don't run into this barrier like, oh no, that's a filter. That's only the gods will be able to work on that. That's not your like there's this barrier in lots of this other software.
So
like you run to an oscillator and that's where it stops. Like this is the oscillator. Like it comes straight from Stanford. It's like it's perfect, and you're not allowed to deal with it.
Well, let me ask you this. So, with Steampipe, as you've gone from Steampipe to Steampipe 2, and was Steampipe 2 the last version of it before you started working on the hardware?
No.
What was the last software version before you went? And when I say software version, I mean released software to the public, to be very clear. What was your?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I might have given a few different things. They might be floating around, and but no, it continuously evolves in my world, and I'm not sharing everything. Like my recipes are so secret that the meals never leave the kitchen, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, when I look at, for instance, when I look at Steampipe 2 versus looking at the hardware, there's a lot of design changes as far as user interface, right? And I've found that when I create presets on software versus on the hardware, I'm going to new places with it, right? Like I've been using Steampipe for a long time, and I did not make the same sounds with this as I did. Now, granted, there's also a lot more modulation going on as well. Like the LFO section and the mod matrix stuff that I was able to do here is really fun. But I just find myself not going to the same places when I'm creating sounds and exploring in different ways because of the tactile surface and everything. What moving to the hardware? What was it about that format that you found needed to change and maybe didn't translate as well, or just needed to be tweaked to really get it to where you felt comfortable with it?
I think this should go to Gears because I think that the Erica, since they have a huge expertise in like how to make things good for live, for performing, for dialing the knobs and doing stuff.
Yeah, so in that sense, Erica Synths and 112 dB, philosophically, we are like radically opposite companies because 112 dB, they make software instruments, VSTs. We are a seasoned hardware company. We actually developed Zen delay plugin, which met very nice, which was very well welcomed by media, by musicians, and so. But in a couple of months, we gave it away to NinjaTune and Liquid Sky Portugal because we genuinely did not connect with this VST instrument. So we decided that we will focus only on hardware instruments. And when it comes to hardware instruments, there are several limitations. Yes, unlike on VST, you just I want another knob somewhere. You just program it in, and that's it. You do not care how wide the instrument is or what the surface of the instrument, basically. Of course, there are some aesthetics also in software instruments, and some of them, and most of them, are visually amazing, of course. But as you can mention, the way how you interact with software instrument versus hardware instrument, it's radically different, because you can use both hands to tweak knobs on a hardware instrument, and which you cannot do on a computer screen, right? Also, in a hardware version, we wanted to have lots of modulations, which again is easy to add on a software instrument, but on hardware we had to figure out smart way how to implement 5 LFOs without making interface too much cluttered, you know, and the synthesizer itself had to have some reasonable form factor, right? So yeah, we took the original Steampipe interface and laid it out on a hardware instrument with the idea that it has to be possible to put in a rack when you add rack ears. So the width of the instrument was kind of preset or limited, right? And then yeah, we started to lay out other controls with those extra modulations in mind. Also, we had quite a challenge to agree on various types of modulations, because one is like LFO, but other is mapping different controllers to specific parts of the synthesizer. Like on keyboard controller, you basically have mod wheel and this pitch wheel, and then you have note information and velocity information. But on some wind controllers, you can have multiple other modulation possibilities, like rotation, elevation. Some measure volume of your mouth when you can modulate that as well. So there, Pedro was contributing a lot with his ideas on, and Pedro wanted all possible modulations, of course.
As we all do.
Yes, yes. And then like I always love to quote Napoleon, who said that essence of strategy is sacrifice. So when developing the hardware instrument, we always apply this idea that what you sacrifice to get the most favorable and easy to use and most fun to use interface. So yeah, and we had 3 hardware iterations. So because we do not make, I mentioned it before, we do not make 3D renders of the instrument. We always make a hardware version of it, because only when you touch the thing you really feel the feedback, you know, and you really feel if everything is in place. And so yeah, so that's that. And also you can test it, because initially we had not that well designed from electronics perspective output stage of the instrument, and then we redesigned it radically to have balanced outputs and so on and so on. So yeah, that's kind of very interesting challenge, how you turn a VST or a software instrument into actual hardware, where you have limited space and where you have to consider all possibilities which need to go there, and you do not have luxury of just adding another knob, because it simply does not fit on the interface. There's limited amount of knobs you can actually fit there.
Now this thing went through it went through a process, and I know that from my own unit here, I mean, you guys were really kind of working on things up until release, till right before release. With I think the most final change to it was the patch volume, right? Which is
Yeah.
which is a great addition, by the way. Like that right there makes all the world when you're trying to balance between presets and how you use things. In the chat, we have Drew Schlesinger, who also had worked on presets for Steampipe. And one thing that I found really interesting when I was looking at some of his presets versus the presets that I had done is he was utilizing things like the clipping inside of the unit, and you can't do that if you don't have control over that patch volume. You can't do it in a meaningful way because you essentially have two volumes on the unit. You've got patch volume, and then you really cool aggressive tones out of it that way. That I was kind of like worried, like I don't want to supply anything that's going to be clipping out too much, and we even had some discussions because I still have some presets that were not included in there that I'm like, but that was my best one. But it's because but you have to think about how these things are going to pair together side by side when you start navigating through presets. So one of the questions that Drew had posed in here was he was curious about the timeline from when it was decided to build this hardware unit to when it actually got released. How long did that take, and what were the changes like during that process?
I think we worked on Steampipe for a couple of years, but it
I
was
think so.
because we first showed it on Superboost 2023, but then by some reason we had other priorities, and we simply put it on hold for quite a while. But because of popular demand, we resumed work on it, and we launched it, as you know, last November, so end November. And I'm sorry, if I may quote a friend of ours, Andris from GAS of Latvia. So he's one of pioneers in Latvian electronic music, and he actually made presets, not presets, but kind of sound design for Synths. So if you go to our website, there is a lot of sound examples on Synths. So we gave him Steampipe last week, and it appears he used the Reactor version as a lot before. And so I asked him what are first impressions. He said, phenomenal. It sounds much more organic than presets on Reactor. Sorry, Martijn. It's ideal for ambient and film music, and so it's easy to get into noise areas, but specifically in quiet patches, there are a lot of beautiful nuances, and so he's inspired from the first time he touched it, and now he has to dig deeper in technical nuances, and so there is a huge difference when you play software instrument or a hardware instrument. It's both in like physical experience, and also maybe it has to do something with your psychoacoustics or something, but as he said, well, hardware instrument gives much more deep and nuanced sound.
So I'm curious from Martin's perspective, who's been using Steampipe in all of its iterations ever since he conceived of it. Now having it in hardware form, do you find yourself using it in a different way? Do you find yourself constructing sound on it in a different way? And just overall, what are your impressions of now having this in a hardware box as opposed to on your screen, and how you interact with it? Do you notice that it changes you in any way, or do you feel completely fluid one-to-one both ways?
Well, I don't know. Like, for me, it is that I'm very proud that now it is a hardware unit, and of course I love to to wiggle the knobs and how it feels and stuff like that. But for me, like I cannot now it's a box, like I cannot go in. So for me, it's very important that I can just go back into a code editor and just type code, and then it changes all the time because I create these things, these ideas. So the Steampipe, in a way, is not in a box, or it's not in a VST or anywhere. But it's in my head, so it continuously changes. So if you ask me in a couple of years, like, hey, how about another Steampipe, then it's probably going to be completely different again. And yeah, I see. I completely get the tactile experience of hardware instruments, and I think it's fantastic. It's especially if you're performing, then it's just. Yeah, it's really the body machine feedback is really good. But I also like a computer very much. I think it's absolutely great. Like when I saw Star Trek, when I was like, I think 4 or 5 years old or something, and then they landed on the moon, these people, and I always mixed them up, like, but anyway, like in the sounds and stuff like that. And then you had this computer with all these lights, and they were blipper. I was just like, I want a computer. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic what a computer can do. It's absolutely great, and I don't. I see them as different tools. I think I also, for example, did a bit of the electronic like filter design and breadboarding, like a ladder filter, state variable filter, and oscillator, and trying to get a temperature compensate. And it's also really nice experience. But I think in a way, from a designing point of view, like if you design this electronics, you draw it up, and then you put these components together, and you measure stuff, and it's somewhat it's actually it's somewhat the same, like with the computer. I don't see the difference there, like from a instrument design point of view. I think there's similar challenges. Yeah.
I mean, without computer, I think 90% of instruments would never come to existence nowadays. Because it's like
it's our dependence. Yeah.
So in putting this to, in speaking about the computer aspect of this, putting this to hardware, how challenging was it to decide on the platform that you guys were going to, meaning the processor that you're using inside of it, and getting that all up and running? I know that I think it was Superbooth maybe 2 years ago, it was much earlier in the project, obviously, but you guys were kind of scrambling to get everything working at that point.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that a little bit?
It did work. It really worked, and it was quite amazing.
Wagging of the finger, screaming "It did work" is not the most convincing way to do it.
I know, but the reason why it was a little bit special is because, like, I think an hour before the doors opened of Superbooth, it didn't work. So Janus did it, right? Gibbs?
Yes.
Janus, he just went like, like, and he can do it. So like he managed to get it working. And not everything worked though. Like I think I don't know, I forgot, some modulation thing didn't work, but it for quite a bit it actually did work.
And the most terrifying thing was that the output signal was like hot as hell. It was I don't know, it outputted like 20 volts peak to peak, and
yeah, exactly. We burnt the mixer by the Gush Bass concert, right? We completely fried the mixer. Like, that went pretty bad actually. Everything was completely burnt, and the whole mixer just like went to the trash can after that concert. Oops.
I think one thing that I noticed as I was at Superbooth when people were kind of walking up to it is when you first look at it and you kind of think, oh, subtractive synth, right? So because you've got these big chunky knobs and that's what people are used to. So certainly not. You don't really think of FM synths having that sort of layout. let alone physical modeling. So when people first approach it, and I've even had people come into my studio and they want to mess with it, and I'm like, go ahead and make some sounds on it, and they want to immediately go to like, okay, well, let me reach for the oscillator, let me reach for the oscillator filter envelope. I see some familiar controls, I see envelopes, right? But then they start like kind of waffling a bit, and I'm like, don't think of it like that. Don't think of it. Think of it as a physical object, and you're envisioning air or pressure in a physical object. Start thinking of it like that, and that's how you start controlling it, right? Um,
Mhm.
have you guys noticed the way that people approach it is a little bit different? I'm sure that you've gotten to experience more people getting hands on Steampipe for the first time, which this all sounds very suspect when I talk. Never mind, I'm a
Like,
child.
we actually positioned it as a 8 voice polyphonic synthesizer without any oscillators. You know, we keep telling that that this is completely non-linear approach to sound synthesis, which makes it makes it very fun and like completely. You have to re-evaluate what you know about synthesizers. and
Yeah,
and
I
of
found
course, it's people instinctively reach for filter cutoff knobs, you know, and all of a sudden on a steam pipe, you know, the filter does completely different things, you know, like on a subtractive synthesizer and so. Yeah, so it takes some kind of learning curve to get used to it, but what amazes me about Steampipe that unlike other synthesizers, every knob you touch, there are still musical results, like very musical results. They can take the sound out of tune and so, but you know, if you tweak oscillator cross modulation knob on subtractive synthesizer too much, you know, it sounds like shit, you know. But if the patch is not designed in a smart way, but here you actually cannot, I'm sorry, fuck up the sound radically by tweaking like a single knob. You know, all interaction with synthesizer with a steam pipe is very musically pleasing. Let's put it that way. Martijn, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh no, I'm just enjoying this because, you know, it's if I would have said it myself, that would be extremely arrogant. But to hear it, that's different. I think it sounds like a huge compliment because this is also what I like about other people's stuff when it's like on a mini MOOC, you cannot really go wrong. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's
It's all sweet spot.
it's all sweet
Mm,
spot, yeah. And what we said before, like that people have to reconsider like how this work. I think that's also where something like a mini MOOC really shines because I remember that I first saw the mini MOOC in a friend of mine had one, and that I was just like, and he explained like, yeah, this is this and that, this that, and immediately it started working. And yeah, I think with the steam pipe, it's a little bit more tricky. Like you have to. Yeah, like what you said, kind of like you have to think about something different, like airflow and resonator and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much like, just creating sounds on it. The thing that I kept coming back to, because probably for the first like few hours, like I have other physical modeling synthesizers in my setup. None 8 voice. I had, well, yeah, I guess I did have one a while back that was polyphonic, but most of them are not. Like usually when you see a hardware physical modeling synthesizer, it's not polyphonic. And when you do, there's usually the way that things go about like excitement and whatnot. It's usually like, okay, well, I have like a either a ramp wave or a sample or something is exciting it there, and then it kind of is a little bit more set in stone for you. Like, for instance, mutable
Yeah.
elements, right? Which I think sounds fantastic. It's very fun to use. But it's also very condensed compared to what Steampipe is. It's a very, obviously, it's a much smaller form factor. And the way that the way that it functions, is stripped down to kind of the basics as far as your knobs. But with Steampipe, I feel like I had freedom to really kind of like explore the space that the sound is in, and it's interesting in how you use the reverb not independent from the actual sound source itself. Like I find that really so I had done a video where I showed a bunch of the presets that I had made for it, and some of the people were like, "Oh, you've got all this reverb on here, and I want to hear just the raw flute." And I'm like, "But if you ignore the reverb, you kind of ignore a large chunk of what the instrument actually is, because it doesn't exist in this sterile space. I mean, you can make it do that, but that's not really how it exists. It exists with this beautiful reverb. Like I absolutely love the reverb. I have to say that. Like and that is not me saying that just because you guys are here. Gertz knows. Like I've been freaking out about it because I'm like, oh, it sounds so good, and it's like it's got this luscious vibe to it. But I very much use the reverb connected to the raw sound and not independent of it. And it's the same all the way through the system. It's not like in a subtractive synth, for instance, I might have my oscillators and I might reach for detuning to get some movement there. But in Steampipe, instead of doing that, I'm looking at like, oh, okay, well, how's the symmetry working with it, and then how's the saturation working with that, and then oh, okay, well, like now I have like these tuning offsets that are going on, and I might want to modulate something over here, but it's not just like these independent sections that don't interact with each other. It feels like the whole thing kind of is interacting with itself all the time.
Yeah, well,
I don't
thank
know
you.
that there's a question in
Yeah,
there.
man.
I'm just ranting.
That's
No,
a
I
beauty.
like it, but it's like it's kind of it's also kind of what I try, of course. Like for example, with the reverb, it's also like an evolving algorithm that I kind of made at some point. And what I noticed, for example, well, a friend of mine, he had a Lexicon, like the really expensive one in the 80s, like that. And I was like, yeah, that's good, right? But of course I couldn't afford one. And then all sorts of reverbs that I found, like, I don't know, like back in the days, Yamaha SPX, right? And still with reverbs now, it's like if I put something in the reverb, and then the first little bit, it sounds kind of like a reverb, and then it becomes a little metallic, and like it's yeah. And
Yeah.
also, if I make the reverb longer with a lot of this reverb, and I go like, I play like a chord, then the chord will kind of like goes into like more tin canny
Yeah, you
something.
get this weird breakup. I don't know that it's aliasing, but you definitely get like these metallic
Yeah.
overtones that come back.
Yeah, exactly. So I, when thinking about all these things and like how this flows and stuff like that, I found that this algorithm that I kind of like continuously like improve and tweak all the time. Here I can put like a chord in there and make it reverb for like an hour, and I can still hear the same chord, and it's still interesting, and it's still evolving somehow. And I think it's a pretty good reverb, I think.
Yeah, I like it a
I
lot.
did my best,
And the fact
I'm
that you can
very
process sounds through Steampipe, and it's not just like a straight through to the reverb. It's you're actually processing it into the unit. It's like kind of slicing up the sound. Um,
happy. Yeah.
that's a
but
Yeah, you
very
mean
interesting aspect.
the audio input of Steampipe, you mean, right? Or what?
Yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
No, that's a little bit of a tricky one as far as providing for the original factory bank of presets, because it's like you don't really know what people are going to be putting in, and you also run the risk of like
Yeah.
when you set that up, okay, there's no sound if you don't have it set up, right?
Right.
Um so yeah, that's something that I feel like, and this is me kind of staring down Gertz. that some future presets are gonna have to come for download on the website with specific packs towards that kind of thing, because I feel like that's stuff that's easy to overlook, and it shouldn't be overlooked.
Let's leave it for people to experiment and be creative as well.
Yeah.
So I have a question in here, and one of the questions
but
was,
one thing I originally did with my experimental, like never to the public release, was not called Steampipe, it was called ScreenPipe. And the ScreenPipe just had like a microphone input, and it would do pitch tracking, and it would use your voice as like the modulator. So you could just scream in it, and it would just sound like a huge horn or whatever. So yeah.
So what you're saying is just a future update with a pitch follower for Steampipe.
Something like that. Yeah, that could work. Yeah, right.
I'd be into it.
It's
I'd
a
be
screen
into it.
Yeah.
So one of the questions was, and I think that this kind of gets back to the UI stuff that we were just talking about as far as going from software to hardware. There was a question, and I'm kind of scrolling back a little bit, from Synth Samurai asking about, he says, people said the Reactor Ensemble Steampipe 2 had stereo spread option, but that the Erica Synth Steampipe doesn't have the stereo pan spread option at the moment. And I think that that's coming back to how the reverberator is working with,
No.
because you have that there. But
Yeah.
is this
what you're
different?
talking
We wanted to have some areas of improvement for future firmware updates. So.
The
Maybe,
slyness
yeah.
of it all.
The thing what he's talking about is like that steam pipe. What I did is like basically, if I had 8 voices, then every voice would get like a different position in the stereo field. And this spread function on the reverb, it's more that the reverb gets more wide or narrow. So it's a different thing. So he's talking about. Yeah, it was just like what Albertheim did. Like you play notes and then it goes either left or right.
Oh,
left,
yeah,
left,
yeah.
You can also, I think, in Sonic you had this then every voice gets like in a certain position, and I never heard anything about it except people that hated it. So I always got complaints about this spread, and then so I thought like, okay, like I'll just take it out. Like who gives a shit, right? Saves me a knob, right? Saves Erica Synths a knob, like everybody happy. And then like somebody starts complaining like, oh yeah, where's the spread? And it used to be on the Reactor Ensemble and da da da, right? And we already discussed it a little bit. Like maybe we should put it back in the firmware update so we can just put it in a display, because it's not so difficult to implement. It was more like I didn't find it necessary, Like,
and that could also be a thing where it's like it can depend on how you're assigning it as far as voices, like whether you're doing like an alternating thing, left and right getting wider, or if you're going hard pans, or there's so many different ways of doing that to make people
this was just
happy.
like every voice had a different position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because like I do other synthesizer things as well, and what I always try, this is also my biggest complaints about a lot of like other digital synthesizers or whatever, like that the things are not continuous. So on a Prophet 5, for example, it's very simple. You hit a note, say it happens to be voice 1, and the envelope goes up, and you hear that voice, and the envelope might go down. But if you play some other stuff and you hit this same voice again, it will just change pitch, but it will not reset phase or anything. It will just, the oscillator will continue, but it will continue on the new pitch, and the envelope will just go up where it left off. And a lot of these synths nowadays, for example, if I say like on a Prophet, it was the trick, you can play 5 notes and you have a chord. And you release your fingers and the chord will fade out a bit, and you play the 5 notes again, and it will just continue from there, or fade in from where it was left, but with new pitches. But what I hear now a lot is, well, if it was 5 voices, I play 5 voices and it will fade out, and I play 5 voices again, and the whole thing goes and then starts fading in from 0. So and for me everything continues. So therefore, also with the Steampipe, like every voice had a position, and I didn't do like because what you said, it also, for example, that low notes are going to the left and high notes are going to the right, which they do a lot of with pianos, right? Piano samples usually have this spreading, which is kind of awkward because that's only for the person who plays the piano. It's never like that for the person who listens for the piano. So whatever, right? It's okay.
Yeah, on
It's
that
just a weird
topic, I just idea came in my mind that I need to visit Liepāja, a city I come from, and there is a church that has world's largest mechanical pipe organ, and I can make a technical drawing of position of pipes, and then we
I was just yeah.
we can
I was about
implement
to say,
this
like,
positioning with the notes.
Nice.
yeah, exactly. That would actually be really interesting. And Frank SQ says, "Can I have stereo spread as a mod destination?" And I think I sent a feature request of some other mod destination stuff. That's always going to be something that I think those of us who use devices are always going to request is mod destination, mod destination, mod destination.
Let's
Yeah,
see what
I usually don't do much feature requests.
Yeah,
because
Martin,
if I
we need to consult our internal Napoleons on what to sacrifice and what to ignore and what to actually implement.
yeah, exactly, because
after
at
doing
the
that-
end, yeah, at the end, I remember a situation in a company whose name I wouldn't mention, but they had to come up with a new product of some sort. And what they would do is like they would make a spreadsheet of like all the competition and all the features that the competition had, and they try to find the notches. Like, oh, then there is not a thing that has this and that and so and so and so. So, we have to build something that has that. And that's not a place I want to be.
Yeah, same here. When you ask, people can give really good ideas, but there are very rare cases when they actually do some connections with real innovation or something, and then you may end up with some Frankenstein creature, of synthesizer instead
exactly.
Yeah,
of
I think my favorite.
But I think it is important to I always like to listen. So I always like to listen what people have to say, because I think sometimes it's something like like once in a while, like it's like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Like you're right. That's a good point. Let's do it.
Yeah,
But
and sometimes you just need
like, because somebody wants it, and now I have to put this extra thing in. Like usually I'm kind of like, probably not.
I feel like one of the common things that I hear is, "Oh, it's digital, so it can do anything," and you're like, "Well, hold on now. One, should it do anything? And two, no, that's not accurate." But
No.
you know, I see that sort of thing a lot. But there can be times where a product needs to ship, right? So you make hard choices because you need to make those hard choices, those sacrifices, as you mentioned, Gertz. But afterwards, and you have time to sit with the released product for a while, there can be times where even the designer can look at it and be like, okay, this is what I'm wanting for, and this is what I'm finding myself wanting to evolve a bit. And that's where I think products really kind of come into their own, is when it's like you've had some time to reflect on it and kind of experience it in your setup, because it's one thing to design a product and have it just sitting on your table and you're using it direct, but it's another thing to use it in a song or like have it in a setup and that sort of thing. You start to find how things blend together, whether something cuts through a mix the way you want or blends into a mix the way you want, or just interacts via MIDI and clock and everything else. Like there's so many different aspects of that sort of thing. Do you guys foresee just kind of evolving at all with that, or is it more like okay, like we did this, we're ready to move forward onto the next thing, or is that just like a constant process?
I mean,
Well,
this one, of course, we will do some firmware updates with new features, and there are some nice, good ideas we already have. Martin, sorry, what you also wanted to add something, and then
no, no,
some
no, you just go.
yeah, and then we have a very major hardware product update coming up later this year. So, but that we will disclose later. Yes.
Oh, secrets.
Do, 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 do.
You're getting yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
Make me start prying. Don't
Well,
do that.
there's also this idea the other way around, because like for me, I have all sorts of like things that always continue and evolving, and they never come to like so in a way there's always something that can be changed and to improve, and it always continues with me. So at the end of the day, like how do I know when the product is finished? Well, when it's sold, of course, right? So hey, then it's finished. So yeah, and then like Gert says, of course there will be like firmware updates of stuff that can be, but in a way, yeah, it's finished and it will be updated and fixed, and yeah, stuff like that.
Mhm. But I mean, hardware-wise, we will not add any knobs or so. There will be like really
No,
nice tweaks in interface. I mean, which you need to access through configuration settings and so. So
yeah,
yeah, because
yeah, we
as I
cannot
told,
drill
this
a
is
hole in the
yeah,
updates, making a
yeah.
knob for the voice spread or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
It's
And it's
going to be
actually
different.
so very like in Erica Synths we have a kind of joke about our development process, which some of us hates and some of us enjoys a lot. Is as I told before, we always make hardware instruments like prototypes playable, and sometimes and that's quite an investment. It costs a lot to make an enclosure, PCBs, solder everything, put it in together like a code for so it runs as intended, and sometimes for us it takes only 10 minutes to say that no, this thing is not working. So we just trash it and start development from 10 minutes. All investment is just goes to the waste because
I'd rather that than be up to the last minute and then decide.
no,
Because
but
then
I
you've
mean
got a whole lot more
it
investment.
simply does not work.
Yeah.
There is something wrong with it. and and yeah, but without it you cannot figure out what actually works.
Mhm.
You know.
Absolutely. Well, listen, guys, we're moving past an hour now, so I'm going to start closing it down. But before I do, I just want to I'm going to open it up real quick as I'm talking to you guys for any last questions from the chat. But also, I want to know from you guys. Obviously, this just came out. I mean, this thing is brand spanking new, so I'm really not asking about new stuff because this is new. It's extremely new. Um, but yeah, just any closing thoughts on this? Any closing thoughts about the main comment that I really kind of wanted to address from reading the comments on the preset demo that I did. Most people just really enjoyed the preset, so like I like to harp on the negative because that's where my mind is. Like I like to always think about negative stuff. So the main
Yeah, why
thing
is
was
that?
just people asking, "Oh, isn't that just a VST in a box?" So I would like to hear from you guys what your response to that is.
Yeah, well, okay. I think it's weird, like a VST in a box. Have you ever seen a VST outside of a box?
Fair.
Let me ask you, like what the hell is a VST in a box? Like it's just like somebody coined that phrase, and like now everybody's like, oh, it's a VST in a box. Like I think yeah, I think it's just weird. Like it's basically there's different instruments. There's pure acoustic, then with physical resonating things. Then there is electric, where you have motors spinning wheels and stuff like that, or solenoids. Like that. That's electric instruments, and you have electronic stuff that is kind of like what is in your modular stuff, and most of the stuff that Erika makes, that is basically electrons floating, and like capacitors that do things with time, and resistors that kind of like transistors that amplify stuff, like, and that combines well. And then there's a computer stuff, which is basically adds and multiplies and feedback, and it's also the feedback and the multiply and the adds that is also what doing the time, and in a way, it's just a different media. And what the important thing is like, it's the instrument. It doesn't grow on trees. None of these things grow on trees. It's people that have like a desire to create something, and they use different tools. And well, actually, a VST is like a virtual studio technology. It's created by Steinberg, and they were, I think, the first to come up with the solution for plugins in host on computer that actually had real time. You could play the keyboard and sound would come out, and that's where the VST term comes from. It's a protocol, like similar to different protocols, but yeah, I mean, what is a VST in a box? What do they mean, that it is like digital or something like that instead of electronic?
I
I
think
remember
a lot of
before,
people.
like, my father thought synthesizers were shit because he said, because it is electronic. If you unplug the electricity, then it stops working. Like, and he had a violin, and he says, this is a real instrument, like the synthesizer. That's bullshit. I think VST in a box versus like analog, I think it's more or less the same bullshit, actually.
And
I think
to
it has a lot to do with just people trying to belittle the importance of a tactile experience. It's the best way that I can put that.
But that's that I wanted to add to Martijn's idea that one thing is how you distinguish instruments by means of how they create sound, but the ultimate goal of the instrument is actually to somehow facilitate your creativity and to get those beautiful results. So the question is not how electrons run in a thing, or what calculations are done inside, but what comes out of the instrument. And I am absolutely convinced that what comes out of physical instrument is totally different from what comes out from instrument in a computer or VST instrument, and where it can get you, in a process. Yes, in VSTs, of course, there's a lot of experimentation and so, but it's the process is more focused to the end result, and you kind of foresee where you are getting. But with physical instruments, there are much more surprises and much more unforeseen paths, where you may end up.
There's a really great quote by Dr. Bob Moog that I can't remember it exactly, and it's been racking around in my brain for like the last week, but it was something to the effect of how important the physical interface, the look and the feel of an instrument is to how it inspires the person. And it always comes back to my mind because I've been extremely inspired by software Like I've been extremely inspired to create and do some of my best work using just straight software, staying inside the box, as it were. And I've also done the same hardware, like had the same, like, just massive amounts of inspiration that I would not have had. Like, it wouldn't be a parallel thing. Like, I'm inspired in one direction on a hardware piece versus on a software piece, and it's just where my mind goes in that moment, where my hands take me, that sort of thing. Whereas, when I'm using software, a lot of the times I like to map things really deeply in my software. I like to have hardware control of my software, right? So if I'm using like Reactor, for instance, a lot of the times I would map it to Machina, right? And I would have everything there, and it's super fun that way. And I love having scribble strips for everything. It's one thing I'm like, more MIDI manufacturers need to have scribble strips for all their knobs, because that drives me nuts when I have to guess what something is. But with hardware, it's like there's if it's done right, there's no guessing, and it's just fast forward
Yeah.
interaction, and that to me is like the main difference for me, is just how
Yeah.
I interact with a piece of equipment, how quickly I move around on it, how my inspiration flows on it.
And it's also a matter of
I
taste.
completely agree, but that is very focused on the difference, and I agree. There is differences, but I think the similarity between these things is that none of these things grow on trees. Like
No, definitely not.
It's imagination. Like so people that create these instruments, they have, and it doesn't really matter if it's like acoustic or electric or digital, whatever. Or whatever, but there is imagination that somehow like finds its way into an instrument. Like my grandfather, he built pipe organs, for example, and I'm quite sure that he had the same. He imagined. It's a product of imagination, and yeah, I think that's a similarity. So I think it's important to also see that. And of course, the interaction thing is like a computer or digital, on a computer with a QWERTY keyboard, like you type text. It's probably a strange interface. It's probably easier to have a piano keyboard or something like that. So there is of course this difference. But as soon as you put like this digital thing, as like with Steampipe in the hardware with the knobs and stuff like that, then it doesn't have this computer interface anymore. So then it has this tactile thing.
So I'm gonna I'll close this out, and just before I do, just to give an example real quick, this is the Steampipe here. Something interesting about this. I just wanted to show some of the differences here. So one of the nice, I don't know if you guys, there we go. One of the nice things about this is that MPE control and polyphonic aftertouch and wind control and how that interacts. You can get such great differences there. Sound. As you had mentioned about quiet sounds, just such a nice way to get these subtle get and that's beautiful reverb. What's that?
That sounds like Pedro Eustache playing a wind controller.
Yeah, and that's just polyphonic aftertouch from this guy. But yeah, it's so nice to be able to just kind of like use it to kind of push the sound. So much fun to play.
Yeah, but what's particularly amazing about Steampipe, because it really runs on physical modeling algorithms, you actually can have very great emulations of weird instruments like flute detuned 4 octaves down, like subcontractor flute, which in real life exists in maybe 4 universities worldwide, and to get a chance to play it, it's so hugely expensive, and you have to travel to Stockholm or to Montreal to play, for instance, Octabase. On Steampipe, you can easily
Yeah,
transpose things up and down, and the character of the sound will be very well reflected to the real life instrument, actually, like how the attack gets longer because the air has to fill a pipe, and so, which is genius of Martin's coding, actually, and understanding of the processes that going on there.
Yeah, I had a blast with doing like the overblow type sounds in the flutes, because that when you use polyphonic aftertouch on it, it's like it's very unique, and the resolution of it is just really wild, because you can get these sounds that kind of like you literally can feel them in your speakers, like building the pressure up, so you know when it's about to break. Like it really, when I say that you create the sound in it, thinking of it as a physical space as opposed to a synthesizer making a sound, it's it's very much like that, because you can kind of ride a line on it where you can feel the harmonics are about to shift and break and move in a different direction, and that's
Yeah,
just
which is
it's so much
uh,
fun to explore.
and which is almost
Yeah,
impossible to do on a subtractive synthesizer. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't
yeah,
matter
yeah,
how
yeah.
advanced it is, yeah, but you simply do not have this functionality there,
Yeah, I really
Yeah, but
love
there's this.
on, like, if you have a really good filter, right, in a subtractive synth, you can kind of get this dissonance area where the resonance is kind of like fighting against the oscillator a little bit, and you can kind of like push and pull. But with this, it's a little
Yeah,
bit different. It gives it this, like, it's like a wave, like where it
yeah,
like a water wave, not a sound wave. It's just like pushing you through.
yeah. If you check out, for example, there's a few presets called Steam organ, and this when you well, the thing with an organ pipe, it's kind of like there's these things called spookies, right? And they live in the organ pipe. And when you blow air into this pipe, this spooky goes like woo, like it makes the sound like whoo, and it flies out of the organ pipe, and then whoo, the organ pipe actually starts making the real sound. So there's these spookies inside there, and sometimes. Like if you play the steam organ, like most of the times it plays the right tune, but sometimes it goes like, whoo, it will just the spooky just gets stuck in. There you go. Yeah, there you go. See, this is
Yeah,
what
I
the
love it.
spookies. Yeah, the spookies. They live in this organ pipe, really, and they get stuck. So they're just like, wah, they can't get out. That's how it works. Yeah, it's with real organ pipes as well. Like you have to clean the pipe always. Yeah.
Okay, so I before I get lost in sound, I will let everyone go. But yeah, so just go check out Steampipe at Erica Synths website, and that is there's a link in the description. And what else do I got in the description here? Some sound demo link, and you can also go to shop.fluxwithit.com. I'm gonna start doing stuff on there again. I've got sound packs, and I got a bunch of free stuff up there for people because people like free shit. So get free shit because it's cool. Uh, but I wanted to show something. Where's it at? I put it somewhere. Oh, it's right in front. It's literally right in front of me. So I'm gonna start throwing stuff like this up on there as well. I started designing my own synthesizer stands that you can 3D print, and this is for the Oxy One, which hopefully I'll have an Oxy One here soon. I just bought one, so. Um, but yeah, just like trying to give back to the community and do stuff like that. So yeah, you can check out fluxwithit.com and whatever else is out there. I don't know. I don't do the influencer thing a whole lot, but I do like to give back to the community because the community's given a ton to me. So that's always fun. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming on the show. I think the work that you guys are doing is fantastic. Definitely check out 112dB. They have a ton of really cool plugins on the website as well that I can't stress enough you should go check out. Reverbs, delays. What's your current favorite plugin that you have up on your site? Just pick one to be your baby that you're just like, oh, I love this one.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah,
They get so jealous, like I'll get in trouble.
we already mentioned Redline Reverb, so you have to pick a different one.
Well, I think the microns are pretty cool.
Okay, so go check that out, and yeah, everybody be happy, and hopefully those of you in California are safe, and those of you throughout the world dealing with turmoil can get some safety and some peace. And oh, look, I was boring your cat. It yawned in my face.
Again,
All right,
thank
guys,
you for
thank you so
us,
much.
yeah, and
It
thank
was a
you everyone who listened and watched the show.
Yes, and I hope, I'm not sure if I'll be at Super Booth or not, but if I am, we'll catch up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have a beer.
Alright.
How about that?
Indeed. All right, let me end the stream now.
Ciao.